Welcome back, everyone. This is Austin Revel on our From the Vault series, brought to you by 2FC Tactical. And we've got a couple Russian PU sniper rifles for you today that we're very excited to talk about. Now, we would like to give a shout out to our customer who allowed us to bring these to you. This is out of his personal collection, and we encourage you, if there's something cool that you have that you would like us to do a video on, please reach out to us. We have our email in our channel's page, as well as drop a comment down below. I do try to read all those. And we do hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe to all of our videos. It helps the channel grow, of course. We'd love to hit 25,000 subscribers here this year. That's kind of our goal. I'd love to do it by the summer, if at all possible. So please like, comment, and subscribe. We also will be dropping this on the Rumble channel as well, because we've had some issues with YouTube lately with taking down some of our videos. So if you don't mind heading over to our Rumble channel and giving that a like as well, we'd greatly appreciate it. Now, with that being said, how about we dive into these Russian PUs? Now, when we talk about the Mosin-Nagant, specifically the M9130, which is the platform that these are built on, they really need no introduction. It's one of the most widely produced bolt-action rifles of all time. It's the most widely participated bolt-action rifle in maybe world history. There's a good argument there. We're still seeing these things be used today in Ukraine and around the world. So they have a longevity to them, and one of the reasons why is just the sheer mass production of these rifles. And even the sniper rifle variants were produced on a scale not seen by any other country in World War II. So there was roughly 388,000 PU rifles made during World War II. To give that kind of some context, the United States Remington A4 sniper rifle platform, there was only a little over 28,000 of those made. It's just kind of wildly different scales. So the Russian doctrine was very heavily invested into snipers very early on. This, of course, was immortalized in that movie from 2001, Enemy at the Gates, starring Ed Harris and Jude Law, and really kind of shows the brutalness of the warfare at Stalingrad, especially when it came to the sniper battles. And of course, that's dramatized, but with that being said, it does give you just a small peek into the Russian doctrine of what they were trying to do with rifles such as these. Now, when it comes to when did the Russians develop or come up with the idea of let's put forth a sniper program and develop a rifle for it, it was actually very early on in the early 1900s. So the Bolsheviks overthrew the Tsars in 1917, exiting Russia from World War I. And it was in 1920 that they started developing a sniper rifle. And it was in 1920 they also tried to develop a semi-auto rifle, which we have right behind us, right up there, the SVT. That would eventually enter production in 1940. And these scopes here that you see on the PU that became famous with this particular setup was actually originally designed for the SVT-40. It's one of the reasons why it's short. If we don't have a German variant to show you, and there was German variant scopes, the PEs and the PEMs, earlier versions of these that had longer, more traditional rifle scopes that you and I would associate. The Russians actually cut that down so it would not mess up the semi-auto ejection and action of the SVT-40s. Now, the SVT-40s did not perform well as sniper variants. The cold bore shots, as the barrel shifts as it gets hot, all those things ended up being massive issues. And by 1942, so to back up, the Russians put the sniper variant SVT-40 in production in 41. By 1942, just a year later, they're already ceasing production and reintroducing these guys with some slight changes, not to the scope, because they had a bunch of these. The idea was to use what they had. They had to recreate the mounting system from the SVT-40 to the 9130. And if you know your history, by 1942, Germany and Russia are no longer allies. They're, in fact, enemies. Germany has invaded Russia and is pushing hard toward Moscow, and that would eventually come to a stalemate and then a retreat at Stalingrad. But by 1942, the war is kind of still up in the air. Russia needed snipers, and they needed them fast. So they are taking a platform that they have in abundance. They are taking a scope system they have in abundance, and they need to make a mounting system quickly and efficiently and often crudely. So that's where you get this side mount bracket that you see today. And there's two main companies that would do this. This would be ISVEC and Tula. So we do actually have an ISVEC one right down here and a Tula one right up here. There's a couple of ways you can tell if they're true sniper variants. So first off, you're going to look at the serial number. So when you look at ISVEC, you'll see that there are 2 acrylic letters followed by 4 numbers. If you look at Tula, you'll see that there are 2 acrylic letters and then followed by 3 numbers. There will also be a C circle stamping at the very top of the receiver, and for the ISVEC, and then for the Tula, you'll see a CH or a CN stamping at the very top of the receiver. These indicate whether or not you have real sniper rifles, and that is important to highlight for collectors. These are often faked. And fake could be a strong word in some ways, because you'll get what we call decommissioned rifles, or we should say ex-sniper Mosins. And what that means is that after the war in 1945, the Russian military would go through a drawdown, obviously briefly, because the Cold War would start just a few years later. But during that 2-3 year interwar period, they would do a drawdown and reevaluate these guns and see which ones were performing at the level that a sniper should, and then take out of service the ones that are not. These were made relatively quickly. So when you think about the fact that they started production in 1942 and they ended production predominantly in 1944 of sniper rifles, they built 388,000 guns in just 2 years. That's an insane production rate. So when they draw down, they decide that, hey, if we got some of these sniper variants that are, they work, they're within standard infantry specs in terms of accuracy, but they may not be precise enough for whatever reason, whether it be a little worn out in the bore, crown damage, maybe scope damage, whatever the reason is, we'll just remove the brackets from these and take the scopes off. We'll weld those shut, and we'll put it back into infantry rifles. And, no harm, no foul. We don't need to make any major changes. So you'll see some of those post-war, and definitely when they come to the United States, get imported to the United States, get quote-unquote reactivated as snipers because they're worth more money. They were real sniper rifles, and all the stampings would be correct on them. They had just been deactivated and reactivated, and these brackets are easily machined and easily faked. So you want to take some closer peeks at whatever you have to make sure that what you have is a real one, not an ex-sniper. And most of the time you'll see cross-outs on certain serial numbers, and we're going to get into that in a minute. It's little things like that just to know what to look at, and that's one of the things that we'll break down with these two. Now, with that being said, when we look at these guns, like what is the major differences between, say, this and a regular 9130? There's really only 2. You could make an argument 3 differences, but that's it. First off, the most obvious one, it has a scope mount. Side bracket scope mount that was developed in 1936, put into production in 1937, specifically for the SVT program, and then redesigned in 1942 and updated to work on the M9130. The other one is the bolt. So when we flip this around, you'll see that the bolt is bent sideways and elongated just a little bit. There's a couple reasons why you would do that. First off, it just keeps it out of the way as you're moving around. But the main reason is, as you manipulate the bolt, it clears the scope, just like that. If you had a regular 9130 bolt that is straight up and down, it would interfere with the scope. Now, there is a trade-off here. You can no longer use stripper clips with this like you could with a regular 9130. Now, the Russians' solution to this was you just load it single cartridge at a time by hand. You're a sniper. You're not doing high rates of fire, typically speaking. You're taking measured shots. So if you load your cartridge one at a time, that's not a big deal. The only other major change to this versus the 9130 is the front sight post. If you look over here, you'll see this is a little bit higher than you would normally see. That's just because they are not zeroing these rifles with bayonets in mind. You typically don't have a bayonet on a sniper rifle. Of course, these could accept the 9130 bayonets just like any other one because it is a base rifle, but they would actually zero this without the bayonet in mind because you're really never going to use a bayonet as a sniper rifle unless something went drastically bad. So those are really the only three major changes. Everything about the rifle is the same. The production of these rifles are the same. And a lot of times these rifles were already rifles that were made that they just retrofitted in, or they were in the process of being made, and along the line of the assembly line was like, these 10 are going to go over there and you're going to convert them to PUs. So there's not huge changes there. When it comes to the scope mount, there's really not a lot to it. So I'm going to flip this back around here. So there's two elevation screws up above and below here, and then there's this massive screw here to the rear, and that's what holds it in. There's a little bevel. As we back this screw out and pull this off, this little bevel is what this actually slides into. Slides in right there to this nub, and this massive screw holds the whole thing in tight, and you would adjust your windage with these two elevation screws at the top and bottom of the plate. You do have a pretty typical windage and sight adjustment as you would see on your scope itself. Now, with that being said, what is the quality of scopes? I hate to break it to everyone, these are pretty terrible, even by the standards of the day. Germany definitely had a massive advantage when it came to their scopes versus the Russians. The fisheye is really bad on these things, and the glass is at a pretty poor quality, given the day and the age. So you're not getting the clear pictures that you would see, say, an enemy at the gates when they're looking through their rifle scopes. That is not what you're getting. These are 3-power scopes versus the typical 4-power that the Germans would use, so it is a weaker scope. But they just had so many of these for the SVT-40, and they had to scale it down to get over the action issues. So these are kind of retrofitted onto this rifle, not necessarily designed for this rifle. Now, when we get to the differences of these two, the biggest ones are in the scopes themselves. So these are both the real snipers. They have the correct serial number patterns and stampings. The biggest difference is in the scope itself. So if we look at this one here, this is an actual World War II scope. And the reasons why I can say that is based on the scope itself. So if I can get this off there, and lay the rifle down. And if you look at the way this one is made and machined, it's pretty rough. You do have the nice hammer and sickle there, and the serial number. So this is where we're going to get into the differences between Tula and IJVAC. So Tula would not actually put the rifle serial number on, or excuse me, the scope serial number on the rifle. They would actually put the rifle serial number on the base plate and not put the serial number of the scope on the rifle. Now this one is interesting because it does actually have the serial number of the scope on the rifle. So that means this must have been refurbished at some point, because you have serial numbers crossed out, and this is a Tula gun. So for somewhere along the line, someone updated this. This does not look like a Polish update, but it very well might be Poland or Hungary. They did do some updates after the war. But again, this is the correct scope to the gun in terms of what you would have, because you do have the rifle serial number on the base plate like you would normally have here. For whatever reason, it was changed. This one is a little bit different over here. This is an IJVAC one. IJVAC did not put the serial number of the rifle on the base plate itself. It actually put the scope serial number on the rifle. And that's where you would see stuff like you see over here on the Tula, where it's force matched. This one does not have that. This one actually doesn't have any numbering at all indicating the scope to it, which is kind of unusual. You would definitely see this on the IJVAC somewhere. There would have been somewhere here on the receiver a serial number for the scope itself, which makes me a little interested as to what changed here. And the scope that we have with this one is from the 1950s, which is most likely a Hungarian scope, because they did make a run of PUs in Hungary, 1952 to the late 50s. I don't remember the exact year they ended. I think it may have been 59. They did make a late run of these for the Hungarian military, well after they ceased production in the Russian factories. So this very well could be a Russian scope, or excuse me, a Russian sniper rifle, but whoever bought it at one point didn't have a scope for it and just found a scope to put on the rifle, would be my guess. It does have the correct acrylics. It does have the correct stampings on the receiver, minus the scope serial number. And I've looked all over this thing. I cannot find it. So this one is a little bit more up in the air as to, you know, why is it the way it is, because it has the wrong stampings for the wrong gun. Where this one technically has all the right stampings, minus the fact there is a serial number stamping on the receiver, which you didn't typically see with Tula. So they're almost backwards. And that I do find that interesting. With that being said, it's very cool to see a pair of these, especially from the two factories that made them. That's kind of unusual. You don't see the Polish reworks much at all. There's not a ton of those. The Hungary made even less. If you have an opportunity to pick one of those up, you absolutely should. They're highly collectible. And even the fact that these have some differences of what you would typically see still makes them cool, because you can show off the kind of the differences and what to look for, because there are some very specific stampings that you can look for. And that really comes down to something that I knew growing up a lot when it came to, say, Civil War collectibles. You know, you'll see real guns or real belt buckles or all these other things of the time, and people will go through and try to forge them as something else to make more money. And unfortunately, when you do look for PUs, make sure you look it over hard, because you don't want to get duped, because a lot of these were faked. And there are a lot of real ones out there. Like I said, they made over 388,000 of them, but a lot of these were faked when they came into the United States, because they do go for more money that way. With that being said, I do appreciate you taking the time today to kind of go through these. These are very exciting. We have a lot more to come to you on our From the Vault series. Please check out all our other videos, where it's our Shorts from SHOT Show, or the updates we're doing on the laws here in Minnesota. We're entering our legislative session, so there's going to be a whole bunch of laws that are going to probably pop up as bills that we should discuss. And of course, the Supreme Court's hearing a couple of firearm laws or firearm cases right now, so we definitely will have some thoughts on those. But till next time, we'll see you then.